this is just the reality of land sales and why you need a good realtor too, because you can have something listed on the MLS and there will be buyers out there and they'll never know if you're not also putting up signs, you're not also proactively posting in Facebook groups, reaching out to the neighbors. I mean, it's just all right. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Big Picture Blueprint. Today, Mason and I are talking a bit about the on-market opportunity that we're seeing right now and really just a general market update and what really prompted the show. I mean, Mason has, I think, thousands of acres under contract, most of which came from on-market listings. And I was just looking at another one that I'm going to be making an offer on that's listed on the market that I can't believe how nice of a lot it is to have been sitting as long as it is. And so this is the positive of today's market, and we're going to talk a bit about that.
Yeah, I think, yeah, just like you said, I've got, 5 big projects going, 2 of which were off market that came from direct mail, 3 of which were on market deals. One was sitting for a long time. The other 2 were relatively quickly that we were able to scoop up, but it's an interesting buying opportunity. I feel like, as we record this episode today on February 19th of 2026, I'm seeing articles of mortgage rates drop to lowest level in nearly 4 years, which, we can talk about some of the impact, if any, that mortgage rates kind of have on the land business. But in general, I think slowly but surely seller expectations are starting to come to reality, which is what's allowing us to buy deals at what we think we can make money on, which is exciting. Some sellers are still out of their minds and will refuse any offer except their asking price. But it's a really, really exciting time to be in the land business.
Yeah, I agree. I'm the most bullish I've been in a while because at the same time we're selling a lot of Colorado lots. The Southeast has been slow because of that snowstorm and how cold it was, but demand or inquiries seem to be picking up down there. And then on the other flip side, we're selling everything in Colorado. It's kind of crazy, and this was really drilled into my head over the last few months, and especially yesterday. The Colorado project that I bought last July on market now. It's only been 8 months, and or 7 months, and all of those lots are under contract now to sell. Nothing counts till it's done and closed. But I can't believe how well that project has done, and just the fact that that was sitting on the market is just crazy to me.
Yeah, no, I know. I know we're jealous and wish we had picked up that project ourselves. But let's talk about this, I guess, at what we're seeing and what the indicators are in the market that are allowing us to, view this as a great buying opportunity. Dan, we're talking about it. We're bullish. Obviously, a lot of the business we do is off market and on market, and we can make distinctions in the conversation for that. But what kind of at a macro level do you feel like is going on in the world that makes it actually a great buying opportunity for us right now?
Well, frankly, I think this is more normal. It's just most people that are involved with real estate and also listen to podcasts got into the business during the pandemic. And that was not normal. And there was an enormous amount of money pumped into the system. And so what do you know? Everyone got into real estate. Everything was selling overnight. Just a lot of liquidity and a lot of trading was happening. Whereas, I started a few years before the pandemic, and I have a number of friends who've been in the business much, much longer. And it's very normal for a normal person or investor to be able to buy at a discount when you're buying 100x the size of a lot or 50x the size. That every business is that way, where if you go to Costco and buy a pack of waters, it's much cheaper per water than if I buy one at the gas station. And the same is true of land. If I'm buying 640 acres versus 135-acre piece, it should be much cheaper. And so, frankly, I think we're just back to some normalcy. And I think in addition to that, I think there's still fear in the market and there's a lot of ignorance. There's a disconnect because land is still really inefficient, where if you look at comps on Zillow next to the 640-acre piece we were just talking about, doesn't look like I got that good of a deal. Whereas you and me and other people that are actively selling land and many of these off market, and therefore they don't show up on Zillow, have some insider knowledge and know that there's demand out there. So it's a couple things to summarize. I think to some degree, it's normalcy in the market, but number two, it's land specifically being really, really inefficient, especially rural acreage at this scale outside of, second and tertiary markets.
Yeah, I totally agree with them. I think some additional, I guess, things to think about related to this is you mentioned normalcy occurring in the market again. And I think now that the pandemic, we're, the stay-at-home order kind of happened March 16th of 2020. We're coming up on 6 years now since the beginning of the pandemic, and about 4-ish years since things kind of started really opening back up. And so time has been a big thing to kind of correct that black swan event that occurred with the COVID-19 pandemic. Additionally, as all of this time has gone, all of the farmers and ranchers and big landowners in the United States have continued to age, which means that a lot of land and a lot of acreage. I mean, I've seen data showing upwards of 100 million acres are changing hands over the next, you know, 8 to 10 years. Of a lot of that data came out 2 or 3 years ago, and it said 10 years, and now it's just 8 years from now. So tremendous amount of people that are not necessarily interested in agriculture are inheriting land that they don't want, and it gives us opportunity to, kind of combat a little bit of the affordability crisis. A lot of people want to move out of the city where it seems like it's too affordable, or it's too unaffordable, it's too busy, and move out onto rural acreage, or just keep it for some of the agricultural benefits, which is another thing that's going on right now. Is, I mean, the price of beef is outrageous, and that doesn't always translate to the amount of money that the farmers are actually making, but people see it as an opportunity to get into this business. As the dollar potentially weakens, people are drawn towards, and this goes into the selling opportunity that we have as kind of rural developers. People want to go where the dollar is safe, which is land, it's natural resources, it's agriculture, it's stuff that's not going away probably in our lifetime, which makes it really interesting. All of these different dynamics that we're talking about here, that means that we can come in and buy the ranch and sell it by the pasture and make land ownership affordable to the average American, because most people aren't interested in buying 640 acres at a time, but they can buy 35 or 40 acres. They can homestead, create their dream, or just run cattle on it, or lease it to farmers, which, I mean, that's a majority of what our buyers are doing, is just leasing it right back to farmers, which makes it so where, it's a great place to be, at least in our minds, for the next, 5 to 20 years in this business.
Yeah. As you were talking, there's a point I really want to drive home to people, which I, I I say this all the time, but I feel like it's lost on people. And so I have a great example, and that is just how inefficient the land market is. And so I've had those lots out east for sale since last July. The neighboring homeowner of two of the lots finally calls my realtor and goes, "I didn't realize these lots were for sale." And, somewhat serendipitously, they happen to know each other, that realtor and that homeowner. He goes, "Oh, I don't want neighbors. I'll buy those two lots." And so two of the sales are going just to a neighbor who does not want neighbors. And it just makes the point of, it makes several points of, this guy hadn't realized they're for sale. There were other signs on the tracks, but these are huge. This is like a square mile of land collectively. It's not in a perfect square. Um, and so he hadn't noticed any of the other signs, didn't realize the two right next to him were for sale until 6 months, 7 months later. And my realtor put up a sign on one of those because he had sold the other one that he had his sign on. And this is just the reality of land sales, and why you need a good realtor too, because you can have something listed on the MLS and there will be buyers out there, and they'll never know if you're not also putting up signs, you're not also proactively posting in Facebook groups, reaching out to the neighbors. I mean, it's just, it's crazy. One more example that illustrates the point. A couple years ago, I listed two lots in North Carolina with, just in hindsight, the wrong realtor. They sat for 6 months. I call a different realtor that I'd gotten to know and had used a bunch of times to relist after the listing expired. Day one, he has them under contract because he just called the builder that he knows, and he goes, "Oh yeah, I'd love to buy those." The builder didn't realize they're for sale because, I don't know why, they're listed on the market for 6 months. And so, 2 points: it's super inefficient, and you have to do everything you can to get buyers' attention. Uh, Number two, you really need a good realtor that does everything that they can do as opposed to just throwing on the market. And number three, it's because of this inefficiency and the fact that a lot next door to someone can be for sale and them not realize it, that it's so much easier to get good deals in land as opposed to other assets because it's just not well advertised or understood.
Yep, and I think that, we and that this is maybe a mindset tip for you guys. We think in the bubble of whatever our own reality is, and we're constantly on all of the, MLS and third-party MLS syndication sites and land.com and this, that, and the other thing, and that's it you know, we're scrolling through Facebook groups, we're looking for deals, we're constantly aware of what's going on in the market. Our buyers are not necessarily aware of what's going on in the market. And, beyond putting a sign out there, beyond, putting the property on the MLS and putting it on Facebook groups, I mean, neighbors are sometimes the easiest buyers. Right where Dan's talking about this, I transaction brokered 160 acres just between neighbors, and I sold it at market price, which was a really easy deal. I didn't have to, pay for any advertising. I just called the people around us, and that I think is something to remember is there is not there's not really a maximum amount of advertising that you can do to successfully sell land beyond running Google ads, running Facebook ads, posting all the places we talked about, putting big signs out on the property and everything. It regardless of what the market conditions are, people typically aren't just for a lot of the types of land that we're selling, where there's maybe not the beauty component or like the pure recreational component or like, whatever it is of the last infill lot and, a great neighborhood that everyone wants to buy that they have Zillow searches saved for. You need more eyeballs on it, and there's no maximum of how much advertising you can do for that land.
Yeah, 100%. So those are all great points and examples. To follow up on your other point, just about people getting old, owners of land, I think a lot of these people are just to the point of wanting to take their gains and move on. You have to remember, at least everywhere that I'm doing business, land values from 10 years ago to today have gone up so much that you can give these people a solid gain and still get a great deal for a nice subdivide. And so I think that's a big part of it too. So many of these people don't have anyone to pass it on to. And to that point too, I'm finding that there's quite a gap in the whole land market, not just with land buyers and sellers, but every surveyor I speak to is on the verge of retiring. I mean, they're all old pretty much. I mean, at the youngest, maybe in their 50s. It just kind of everyone's surrounding the land business. It's such an old business in most people's mind, and there's not a lot of young people that have gotten in. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity, not just in the buying and selling, but in the verticals too. I mean, I don't know many new surveyors coming about in Colorado or down in the Carolinas where I'm doing business. There's some new areas we're trying to find people, and all of them are like at least my parents' age, if not older. Many of these people are in their 70s.
Well, and that creates an opportunity for those people that are maybe in the land business. And I think something to preface this with is, the buying and selling, the acquisitions leg, the sales leg, they can be exhausting. And if you're not like the biggest people person on the planet, there are so many, octopus arms within the land business that you can go. And if you are willing to, spend the money, time, and education to get licensed to be a surveyor, I mean, you can build a huge business where I think, that's something that we've considered. We spent so much money on surveying and road building that it begins to make sense to bring it in-house. But the challenge is with a lot of these trades, it requires a good amount of work, uh, education plus years of apprenticeship to figure everything out. And if you can come in and do that well, you can make a lot of money in this business because beyond all of the land changing hands, as this land changes hands, I mean, you need surveyors, you need people that know how to build roads, you need people that know how to build fences, and you can make that money and then invest with people like us that, enjoy the acquisitions, development, and sales side of it.
Yeah, 100%. Let's talk, Mason. What does this actually look like? We're talking about the inefficiency of the market, the ability to get on market land deals. We're both doing that, but it's still not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. There are so many pieces of crap I've had to look at and do due diligence on and talk to realtors and or call realtors that don't call back or make offers and then find out there's something wrong with it. Like there's still quite the funnel to do this. And so we talk about these great deals, but the reality is there are hundreds or over time, thousands of crappy lots that we had to do due diligence on to get to the deals. And not this, just that, but you have to be willing to make lower, lower offers, right? And if you can't have those conversations, you're SOL. So what sort of percentage, if you had to guess, or just using some of the ones you have under contract that are on market, how far below list are you offering to get these deals?
It depends. Some we're offering at list price, or just below, if the numbers pencil. Some we're offering, I mean, 40 to 50% of list price, and some, in between. And I think it's tricky because there's so much emotion in this business for everybody involved because there are so many motivators for each party where the landowner has a dollar figure in mind. The realtor, a lot of times for these on-market deals, has a commission that they calculated based on how much money they're spending on this deal. And you have the number in mind of what you can do to actually profit on it. And it's very rare that all three of those are actually in alignment. I mean, we made an offer on a property yesterday, a little bit below list, but not not terribly so. Like 15% below list price. And you know, before even getting to the point of making the offer, I was just trying to get additional information from the broker. And the first thing he said when he finally responded to me after a week of attempting to communicate was, "We're not offering a co-op commission. We're not paying buy side commission at all." And then he kind of answered some of my questions. And so with a lot of the changes that happen with the National Association of Realtors, and a lot more people not wanting to offer buy side commission, these brokers are behaving very, very bizarrely. So we get God, I don't even know what the percentage is. Less than 10% of the offers we actually get any sort of response on a lot of the times. And maybe 5% of the total offers actually come to negotiation, and then, 2 to 3% actually result in us going under contract. The reason part of these numbers are the way they are is because there's only so much inventory available on the market that we're even interested in. So, this is looking at a sample size of like 20 or 30 deals, which has resulted in 2 or 3. So maybe my math's not completely right, but uh, the general statement is like, you have to be willing to, one, fully understand your numbers. Two, you have to be able to make a good faith negotiation and recognize all of the complexities of it and give everyone the benefit of the doubt. And three, you have to be willing to get on the phone and talk to these people. It can be really uncomfortable offering half of market value or half of list price for some of these properties. But a lot of times if you can back it up and say, hey, this, large tract right down the street sold at the price per acre that we're offering. This is what we feel like we can pay. You can at least have a conversation.
Well, yeah. Tell us a little bit more about that. I'm your listing broker for the seller, and you want to offer 50%. You just call and say, "Hey Dan, I'll give you 500 for the $1 million listing," or how do you preface that? How do you prep them for that beyond what you just said?
Yeah, I mean, I try to get in touch with these brokers, which a lot of them are actually really hard to get in touch with, which is surprising. Once again, just related to the land business, same thing. If you're a realtor, answer your freaking phone. You don't have to answer on the first ring or anything like that, but call back within a day or so. So I try to get as much information as I can online to do like some of the preemptive due diligence. And then I submit written letters of intent directly to the broker. And if and I preface it of, hey, we're interested in the property. We're going to make an offer on it. Here's our letter of intent to purchase. If we can come to an agreeable, agreement on terms and price, we'll convert to whatever state we're doing business in. The realtor standard commission approved purchase and sale agreement. I think that one, that saves me time not having to draft as extensive of contracts for everything. But two, those offers have an expiration on it. I think so often, brokers are so busy with whatever is working for them. These listings that are, sticking around longer, you need to put something in writing. Calling an offer over, texting an offer over, it just doesn't quite get the job done. And legally, these brokers are required to present these offers to their sellers. So if you don't get any sort of response from them, that's a whole different concern. And that is something that we are concerned with certain brokers and everything like that. But it's a really delicate balance of reputation management, of being willing to offer what you can actually pay for the land, and, not, not ruining your reputation as being the guy that, comes in, submits really crazy off the wall lowball offers. I think in addition to, having your general terms of inspection period and, price and everything like that lined up, make it, put effort into the document. Make sure that it's not just, your listing or something like that. Put the legal description of everything. Learn how to read maps too, by the way, if you're doing this business. Like, understand section, township, and range, and know where the roads are. Ideally, go out and look at the property in person. That's going to answer a lot of the questions that you need answered. But I try and get as much information from the broker as possible, establish a bit of rapport there, and then I send something in writing every single time. And that at least gets some form of a response.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good way to go about it. I like the letter of intent instead of filling out a full purchase and sale agreement, because it's pretty long in Colorado. I really hate the standard contract. Although the timeline of it is nice. I agree with that. Really like the somewhat, I don't know. I took Sandler sales training, for anyone that's familiar with that, and it's a little more passive approach. I took that in college, and so I really like the question of, hey Mason, I mean, look, I like your tract. We just bought one down the street at, X. You guys are at 1.5X. Is it worth calling back with an offer if we're anywhere near that? So some version of that question, depending on the context, I find really useful and insightful. Um, so yeah, but my strategy is pretty similar to yours. Now, you know, making this more practical as far as weekly lead measures. For me, I go through each area that I want to buy land in, and every week, I put Zillow at last 7 days, 100 plus acres, houses included, and I look at every new listing. And then if it's something I would buy, uh, good road frontage, nice area, etc., I always put it in our CRM, pretty much regardless of price. If it's something that's priced, reasonably, or I think is it within 30-ish% of what we could buy, I'll call them right away, get the info, kind of have the conversation I just alluded to, and ideally make an offer right then and there. But even if they're overpriced, but it's a really nice piece of land, a couple 100+ acres, I always put it in the CRM, because there just aren't that many of those, and people get tired. And if that sits for a while, you never know. They might take a 50% of list price offer.
Yeah, exactly. You won't know until you know. And I always encourage the brokers to counter as well, of, hey, this is just what our offer is. We're very interested in having a conversation. That doesn't always result in a counter whenever you're too far off on price. But yeah, just like Dan, I look daily and have updates sent to me of if anything within my criteria, pops on the market. I scroll the Facebook groups too. For a few of the good ones, I try and look to see, who's doing what, and get in contact with them whenever they have similar listings, whether it's a wholesaler or a landowner. You never know, because a lot of these families own a lot of land together, and you can ask if their siblings or cousins or whoever owns land that they're interested in selling. And then having conversations with brokers. It's really, really great whenever you can actually do a deal with a broker, instead of just getting no after no after no to their offers, or to, on their list, on their listings, that you can say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. If you get something similar to this, I want to be the person you call first. So you don't have to spend all the money on advertising and marketing. we'll make a competitive offer very similar to this other deal that we did. Makes it so where, you can be the person and then be vocal about what you're doing, be involved in, local organizations, well, whether it's your real estate investor association, whether it's, stuff like mine and Dan's school community or your, local home builder association to be able to say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Who do you know that's doing this? And then in addition to that, of course, sending direct mail, not really doing any cold calling right now, but sending mail, sending, blank offers, blind offers, neutral postcards on all the properties that we're actually looking for. And that's it. I mean, that is acquisitions. That is land acquisitions to a T for the type of projects that we're doing. It's really, really simple. It can be painful of like, I hate getting told no. And I've been told no. I don't even know how many times, since getting in the land business. And it sucks and it's frustrating because it feels like you're kind of bashing your head against a wall and then you get one. You finally get a deal that you think is going to be a freaking, awesome deal. And then something pops up in due diligence that just screws it over. And so you need to figure out how to remove emotion from this because with, the whole point of this episode is like, we're in a great buying opportunity. And, we're speaking about land specifically, and we've been talking about it for a while because this business is really slow to evolve because of all of the inefficiencies that we're talking about. And so there are certain things that I'm sure that Dan and I could be doing that would make this business more efficient on our end. But, for the landowner that's owned their property for 40 or 50 years, they don't care about your tech-driven, like, AI automated, texting responses and stuff like that. They care about meeting you at the property and shaking their hand and doing business the old fashioned way. But I'll pause there for a second.
Yeah, no, I agree with we had a more specific question for you to what you were saying a minute ago about brokers and relationships, because talking about that 640 acres I've referenced over and over again, that seller is a large institution and they own more land in the same area. And frankly, the realtor was terrible. The realtor they used should have sold that so much higher. When I spoke to him, he complained he was just complaining to me about the difficulties with it and a buyer he went under contract with as the fiduciary representing the seller that didn't perform. I'm like, this is supposed to be the licensed expert, and I'm a potential buyer who he's never spoken to before, and he's complaining to me about the last, it was just nonsensical. This guy was not good. And so,
Dan, I'm going to pause you there. I reached out to that broker to try and steal the next deal away from you.
that,
So he would call me and I told him exactly what we're looking for. And
it,
he sent me a like tear down home on a 1/4 acre lot and said, this is what I have, based on what you're asking. This is the competition of land brokers or people that are getting some of these big land listings. So,
yeah.
on the brokerage side or whatever business, advertise as much as you possibly can. So you are the people that get called because the competition sucks.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you threw that in there, you snake. But no. So I reached out to the organization. I looked on the HUD. I found who was signing, and I reached out to the organization directly. And I'll never share that HUD with you, Mason. So you don't- But I reached out to the people directly because this realtor, I have no relationship with him, and he was useless. Now, there's another property on market that we're under contract right now. That realtor is a lot more competent. He's on top of it. He's got a lot of land listings. That would be one where if the seller had multiple properties, I would probably go to the realtor first. And so I know you, Mason, as a licensed broker, I don't know, do you always have to go to the realtor, or can you still, like if you bought a property, realtor represented them, but that seller has other properties, can you try and contact the seller for the other properties if there's no listing agreement on those?
I I wouldn't typically. That gets kind of code of ethics unless the broker just gives me, permission of, even though their relationship is technically over, I'm not going to overstep bounds because I really try to, I'll compete against you all day, Dan. But, with some of these brokers and everything like that, I am very much so operating to the highest, degree of ethics that I possibly can. And if they give me permission, fantastic. A lot of people that I work with, I end up meeting both sides of the table because, there is a certain degree of complexity whenever you're buying properties this big. And then a lot of the times, you're not meeting both sides. But, if you work with a broker that does a fantastic job and, you can say, hey, I want to be your go-to man. I'm going to make you a lot of money. We're going to do a lot of business together. That ends up serving you a lot more in the long run.
Gotcha. Yeah, I agree. And even though I'm not licensed, I still do that for competent people. But for, the broker we both referenced who was not competent, I will go around him all day because first of all, I've been marketing to these sellers for the last 8 years. So it's not anything I haven't already been doing, but I wouldn't go around them on the listing they have, just to be clear, just for other properties. So that one's done and finished. That was last year. I'm absolutely reaching out to those sellers directly because he was an idiot and he shouldn't have gotten a commission and they should have kept more of the money. And so next time I told him work with me directly. So we'll see if I'm able to get them. I'm gonna keep harassing them until I get some sort of response.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is like as a non-licensed person, you've already been in contact with most of these people. You've probably mailed every single person in the counties that we're doing business over the last handful of years, and you're not stopping what you're doing. And sometimes it's great to be able to put a name to a face. And like one of the going back to like some of the verbiage that's used in land marketing for acquisitions, like a really appealing component to a lot of people is not having a broker involved and being able to save, 3, 6, 10%, commission compared to what they would be, selling for on market. And I think, the biggest thing for what Din and I do is like, we're not intentionally lowballing people to make as much as we possibly can. We have numbers and metrics within our business that, if, the properties, if we can, make X amount of dollars and, the seller is willing to agree to our terms, we pay over asking price sometimes on deals. So, it kind of adds a little layer of complexity there, but just, be authentic in your numbers. Every once in a while, you're going to get something. But, I try to tell sellers, this is what I think your land is worth as is. This is what I think that it would be worth developed. This is what we can pay for it. And transparency and authenticity in business has always served me very, very well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's like you said, some that you guys have paid asking price for, and I've done the same many times when it makes sense. Let's see, reading through my notes, I don't know that I have much more to say other than go out there and create a pie box and run every listing through that funnel every week or every few days, make offers, and you will get deals. Because in the Colorado one I've talked about over and over again, we were all in at 430, and the total sales price I think is 950 in what'll be 8 months. So it's a great deal, and that was just sitting on the market.
Yep. Totally agree. Don't, become dogmatic in your marketing approach. Market whatever way you can on both sides of the business to get as many potential deals in your pipeline and as many eyeballs as you can on the sell side. And this buying opportunity, I won't say it will last forever. It takes a long time for things to correct. The land market's much slower, but where there's a tremendous amount of excitement in this space, even as builder optimism has decreased, there's AI infrastructure expansion, there's solar, there's wind, there's a lot of people that you're competing with that have a tremendous amount more money than you do, that are inflating seller expectations. So the one thing you can do is establish great relationships. Land is a people business, and you are going to be working with so many people from the county to the city to the state to the landowner, the surveyors, the road builders, and everyone in between. So be a good, genuine person, and you'll crush it out there. But I think that's it, everybody. This is Mason McDonald and Dan Haberkas with the Big Picture Blueprint, signing off.